Imagine waking up one day with a distinct sense that you've been living your entire life behind a thin layer of glass ability to see the world, even understand it, but never quite able to touch it in the way others seem to. Imagine feeling thoughts move through your mind like tectonic plates, slow but seismic, shifting everything from the shadows. You try to speak, but your words arrive late, like echoes from a cavern too deep for ordinary language. You watch people glide through their lives with a kind of carefree certainty, while you're pulled downward, inward, into a realm most refuse even to glance at. And here's the paradox. The deeper you think, the more intensely alive you feel, and yet, the more alien the world becomes. Why? Why does the act of seeing more make you feel like you belong less? Why does understanding the hidden machinery of your own psyche sometimes make the surface of life feel unbearably thin? There's a peculiar loneliness reserved for deep thinkers, those whose minds do not obey the typical pace or pattern, those who sense meanings behind gestures, motives behind silence, and storms behind the calm of ordinary conversations. You notice things, patterns, shadows, nuances. You read between the lines that most people never even realize exist. And because of this, you cannot simply be. You are always interpreting, analyzing, decoding, haunted by the feeling that everything is connected to something deeper. But what if this sensitivity is not a flaw? What if the very thing that isolates you is also the doorway to a different kind of existence, one that most will never experience, simply because they refuse to look inward? Carl Jung believed that the human psyche is not a quiet place. It is vast, ancient, and alive with symbols, instincts, fears, and forgotten desires. To think deeply is to wander into this inner wilderness, and act that requires courage, and which inevitably sets you apart from the crowd. Because deep thought is not comfortable. It destabilizes the false certainties people cling to. It exposes illusions. It forces you to confront contradictions, both within yourself and in the world. But here's the great question hidden beneath it all. Have you ever wondered whether your depth is not a burden, but a calling? You feel things intensely because your mind is built to perceive what others overlook. You question everything because you cannot accept answers handed down without examination. You wrestle with your own darkness because you intuitively sense that truth isn't found in the light alone. You search for meaning because superficiality feels suffocating. But the cost of this awareness is heavy, because the moment you begin to see the subconscious forces that shape your fears, your desires, your shadows, you also see the forces that shape society, relationships, and the world. And once you see them, you can never go back. Jung once wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." He was right, but pain is not the enemy. It is the threshold. Still, you can't help but ask yourself, if deep thinking is such a gift, why does it so often feel like a curse? Why does the world seem designed for those who don't ask questions? Why do those who think deeply suffer from doubts, while those who never question anything move with such certainty? And here's where the contradiction lies. Deep thinkers crave understanding, yet the more they understand, the more they realize how little control they truly have. They crave authenticity, yet the world rewards performance. They crave connection, yet they refuse to bond over superficiality. They crave truth, yet the truth is rarely gentle. So you keep wandering through your internal labyrinth, searching for a thread that'll lead you out toward deeper in. You feel the tension of it, the pull toward meaning, the weight of awareness, the shadow at your heels that whispers questions no one has prepared you to answer. But what if that shadow isn't your enemy? What if it is the part of you that has been waiting to be acknowledged? This is where the journey begins, not with certainty, but with rupture, not with answers, but with the courage to ask questions others avoid. This is a place where surface reality cracks, revealing the deeper terrain beneath it, the terrain Jung spent his life mapping. And now that you've stepped this far, there is only one direction left to go. Because to understand the psychology of deep thinkers, you must uncover the hidden wound that shaped them, and the hidden force that drives them. You may believe your depth is simply a personality trait, an odd inclination toward thinking too much, feeling too intensely, reflecting too deeply. But there is a hidden problem beneath this surface assumption, one that most people never uncover, because they are too busy running from themselves. The truth is that deep thinkers are not born into a world designed for them. They are born against it. Imagine this. Your mind reaches downward like roots searching for water, while the rest of the world races across the surface, mistaking speed for progress. You feel the slow, gravitational pull of meaning, while societally praises those who skim the surface with rapid certainty. And deep inside, a conflict forms, a split within your psyche that no one taught you to navigate. Carl Jung called this split the divide between the personas and the shadow. Your persona is everything the world expects you to be: agreeable, predictable, efficient, polite, and simple. Your shadow is everything that doesn't fit: your contradictions, your fears, your insights, your intensity, your yearning, your truth, Most people fuse themselves to their persona so tightly that their shadow becomes a forgotten ghost. But deep thinkers, they can feel that ghost breathing. They sense the hidden self stirring beneath the surface, demanding to be acknowledged. This is the root of the tension, the unease, the constant internal dialogue. You don't think deeply because you want to. You think deeply because you can't not think. It's the architecture of your psyche wired for reflection, built for meaning, attuned to the emotional and symbolic undercurrents others instinctively tune out. But this very capacity places you at war with a world obsessed with clarity, comfort, and distraction. Jung believed that the human mind contains archetypes, primordial images, and patterns, inherited from the collective unconscious. Deep thinkers, perhaps more than anyone else, feel these archetypes pressing into their awareness. They sense the ancient hunger for purpose. They feel the tension between light and darkness, order and chaos, ego and soul. They are pulled toward introspection because they cannot tolerate the shallowness of a life lived unconsciously. But this comes with a price. The hidden problem is not that you think too much. The hidden problem is that society teaches you to fear the very depths that you are naturally drawn to. Think about it. From childhood, you're told to stop overthinking, to let it go, to not be so sensitive, to focus on what's in front of you. You're taught that certainty is strength and questioning is weakness. You're taught that fitting in is success and introspection is indulgence. The deep parts of you are curiosity, your intuition, your intensity are treated like inconveniences, so you grow up learning to hide them. And the shadow grows. Nietzsche once said that most people are terrified not of the unknown, but of themselves. Deep thinkers collide with the unknown every time they sit alone in silence. They confront questions without answers. They feel the suffocating pressure of existential awareness. They experience the instability of constantly shifting perspectives, and in the midst of this, the world demands simplicity. But you cannot shrink yourself into simplicity without violence. You cannot betray your internal complexity without consequence. This is where the psychological root of the hidden problem emerges. Deep thinkers often internalize society's discomfort with depth and mistake it for self-doubt. You begin to think something is wrong with you. You question why you feel detached, why conversations feel shallow, why goals people chase seem empty, why you're exhausted by masks that everyone else seems comfortable wearing. You may even feel guilt for wanting more from life than safety, routine, or approval. Schopenhauer wrote that the more intelligent a person is, the more solitude they require. But modern culture pathologizes solitude. It confuses stillness with stagnation and introspection with anxiety. So deep thinkers often end up living in a psychological paradox. You crave profound connection, yet the world exchanges connection for convenience. You yearn for truth, yet the world idolizes comfort. You seek meaning, yet meaning threatens the stability of the collective illusion. This conflict creates an invisible pressure, subtle psychological fracture that influences everything you do, and if left unexplored, it begins to shape your identity in ways you never consciously agreed to. Even more subtly, the problem roots itself in how you interpret your own mind, because once you see more, you feel more. More uncertainty, more responsibility, more nuance. Jung suggested that becoming conscious of your inner world forces you to confront the parts of yourself and humanity that most people would rather deny. This confrontation is not merely intellectual, it is emotional, spiritual, existential. But what deep thinkers often fail to realize is that their sensitivity is not fragility. It is awareness, it is perception, it is the psyche refusing to be asleep. And yet, this same awareness makes life heavier. Sartre once described consciousness as a kind of burden, the constant unfolding of questions, reflections, possibilities. Deep thinkers carry this burden daily. Their minds never stop digesting experience, analyzing intention, observing patterns, questioning meaning. Yet the most profound root of all lies beneath even this. Deep thinkers are haunted by the suspicion that there is something they are meant to understand, something just beyond the edge of language, something waiting in the depths. This suspicion becomes a driving force, an invisible compass. It creates restlessness, a quiet searching, a feeling that the ordinary explanations of life are not enough. And it is this very hunger that both isolates and elevates you. It is the force Jung believed pulls individuals toward individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, not who you were taught to be. But every search has consequences, and the deeper you go, the more of your shadow you uncover, more your world begins to shift in ways you do not yet see. This is where the hidden problem transforms into something larger, something far more powerful than personal struggle. This is where it begins to reshape the world around you, and unless you understand these consequences, the depth you possess may become the very trap you fall into. You don't notice the shift at first. Deep thinking feels, at the beginning, like an internal phenomenon, private landscape no one else has access to. But slowly, subtly, almost imperceptibly, it begins to change the way you inhabit the world. And this is where the unseen consequences emerge, taking shape in your relationships, your decisions, your emotions, and the very architecture of your identity. Because deep thinking doesn't stay inside you, it leaks outward, it rewires you. Imagine standing in a crowded room, listening to conversations swirl around you. Most people are content with surface-level exchanges, updates, complaints, observations, jokes, which you can't stop yourself from noticing the tone behind the words, the tension behind the smiles, the fear behind the silence. You don't even try to. It simply happens. You perceive layers, subtext, patterns. You see the emotional logic beneath the social performance. This seems like a gift until you realize it separates you, not by choice, but by perception. And here lies the first unseen consequence. The more you understand, the harder it becomes to participate in the illusions others depend on. This is the cognitive and emotional divide Jung warned about. Once you glimpse the machinery behind human behavior, the theater of personas loses its hypnotic power. You become the observer rather than the actor, and observers rarely feel at home on the stage. This shift manifests in dozens of small ways. You hesitate before speaking because you already anticipate the misunderstanding. You become selective with your energy because you feel the emotional weight of every interaction. You retreat into solitude, not out of avoidance, but out of self-preservation. People misinterpret this retreat. They mistake depth for distance. They confuse introspection with disinterest. But they don't realize that your silence is not empty. It is full of thought, full of resonance, full of the invisible currents you can't switch off. And then there is the second unseen consequence. The more deeply you think, the more emotionally intense your inner world becomes. This is not drama, it is neurology. Deep thinkers often score higher on trait rumination, introspective sensitivity, and cognitive openness. Their brains demonstrate stronger default mode network activity responsible for internal storytelling, imagination, self-reflection, and mental simulation. This means you do not simply think about life. You live two versions of it: the external, the experience, and the internal interpretation. Every moment becomes layered, every choice carries weight, every emotion echoes. But depth without guidance easily slips into overthinking, into spirals of self-analysis and existential questioning. You begin to feel the heaviness of your own awareness, the burden of constantly seeing the bigger picture. And this leads to the third consequence. Deep thinkers are more prone to emotional fatigue because their minds refuse to simplify reality. Most people use cognitive shortcuts, heuristics, and biases that protect them from feeling too much or analyzing too deeply. Deep thinkers, however, often override these shortcuts, willingly or not, because once you know they exist, you can't unsee them. Confirmation bias, projection, cognitive dissonance, you watch them play out like hidden scripts in the people around you. You notice when someone lies to themselves. You sense when someone avoids discomfort. You feel the unspoken tension in the room. And here is the strange part. You often hold yourself to standards others don't even realize exist. This is not moral superiority, it's psychological weight. Then comes the fourth consequence, more subtle but more dangerous. The inability to unknow what you have learned. Once you begin questioning meaning, purpose, identity, truth, there is no return to innocence. Once you look into your shadow and recognize the complexity of your emotions, there is no return to simplicity. Once you see societal conditioning, cultural narratives, and inherited beliefs for what they are, you cannot accept them blindly again. This awareness creates a disconnect not only with society but with your former self. You evolve out of old versions of you so quickly that people who knew you years ago may not truly know you anymore. Jung described this as a form of psychic rebirth, painful, disorienting, but necessary. But rebirth always involves loss. You lose old identities, old certainties, old illusions, and this can leave you feeling unanchored, even if you're closer to the truth than ever before. The world responds to this transformation in unpredictable ways. Some people feel drawn to your insight. Others feel threatened by your clarity. Some admire your depth. Others resent your intensity, without meaning to. Deep thinkers expose the subconscious in others simply by being aware of their own. This triggers defensiveness, projection, and sometimes hostility. Not because you are wrong, but because your presence disrupts unexamined comfort. And so the final unseen consequence appears. Deep thinkers often walk through life carrying truths that others are not ready to confront. You become a mirror, and most people avoid mirrors, especially the ones that reveal their shadow. This is why you may feel misunderstood, even when you communicate clearly. Why relationships feel draining, even when they are meaningful. Why do you feel old in your age, even when your body is young? Why do you crave conversations that feel impossible to find? The consequence is not loneliness as in being alone. It is loneliness as in being unmet. But this is not where the story ends. Because hidden beneath these consequences is something powerful, something liberating, something transformative. a realization deep thinkers eventually stumble upon. Your depth is not a cage, it is a doorway. But to step through it, you must learn how to stop drowning in your own awareness and start wielding it. And this is where the rebellion begins. The moment you stop being shaped by your depth and start shaping your life with it, you reach a point quietly, inevitably, where you realize that depth alone cannot save you. Awareness, insight, introspection, these are powerful tools, but tools can become prisons if held the wrong way. The unseen consequences of deep thinking accumulate like weight on the chest. The misunderstandings, the emotional fatigue, the inability to unknow what you've learned. Eventually, the question arises, what if the very mind that gives you clarity is the same mind chaining you to invisible walls? This is where the rebellion begins, not outwardly, but internally, in the moment you decide that your thoughts will no longer be your captors. That depth will no longer be synonymous with heaviness. That introspection will no longer spiral into self-erasure. For deep thinkers, rebellion is not about breaking rules, it's about breaking patterns. Imagine this moment. You're standing at the threshold of your own psyche, the shadow behind you, the persona in front of you, and a vast uncharted space to the side. The space Jung believed belonged to the self, the wholeness waiting beneath the fragmentation. Most people never enter this space because it requires a kind of courage they've never had to develop. The courage to confront both their power and their responsibility. But deep thinkers, you've already stood on this edge your entire life. You've already felt the pull of something larger than the ego's demands. You've already endured the discomfort of questioning the foundations of your identity. The rebellion is simply the moment you stop resisting the journey and start directing it. And it begins with the first counterintuitive realization. 1. You must stop trying to fix your depth. The world tells you you're too intense. You feel too much. You analyze too deeply. You think too slowly or too quickly or too abstractly. But the truth is this. Depth only becomes a burden when you force it to function in a world built for the superficial. You cannot live a meaningful life by playing someone else's game. Rebellion isn't about doing more. Rebellion is about refusing to apologize for your inner landscape. This leads to the second. Shift 2. You must integrate your shadow rather than run from it. Jung's greatest insight was this. Your shadow is not your enemy. It is your unclaimed power, the fear, the doubt, the intensity you feel. They are not signs of weakness but signals of potential. The shadow contains your creativity, your authenticity, your boundaries, and your instinctual wisdom. It is the part of you that refuses to settle for imitation. Samurai warriors once believed that courage was born from confronting death, not avoiding it. Likewise, psychological courage emerges from facing the darkest parts of yourself. When you integrate your shadow, something miraculous happens. Your inner world stops fighting itself. You no longer oscillate between extremes of overthinking and self-sabotage. You no longer crumble beneath the weight of your own awareness. You gain a groundedness that others can feel, a quiet strength that does not need validation. Then, a third revelation emerges. 3. You must redefine connection, not reduce yourself to achieve it. One of the greatest struggles deep thinkers face is the myth that being understood is the only form of connection that counts. But this is an illusion. True connection is not sameness of thought, it is resonance of truth. You do not need people who think like you. You need people who think deeply in their own way. People who can sit with silence without fearing it. People who can hold space for intensity without shrinking from it. Rebellion means accepting this. You won't connect with many, but the connections you do make will be tectonic. And then comes the fourth shift. Subtle, but revolutionary. 4. You must learn to wield your mind, not drown in it. Deep thinkers often mistake introspection for action, but insight without embodiment becomes a Lupin elegant, exhausting loop that starts with understanding and ends with paralysis. To break free, you must transform reflection into motion. This requires something philosophy rarely teaches, the discipline to return to the present moment. Nietzsche believed that to live deeply, you must learn the art of self-overcoming, continuously rising beyond your own patterns. This is not achieved through analysis. It is achieved through practice, breathing, grounding, choosing, speaking, risking, acting. The rebellion is not against society. It is against inertia. And finally, the most transformative realization of all. 5. You must allow yourself to evolve. Without permission. Many deep thinkers unconsciously live as if they are defending a thesis of who they once were. They cling to old ideas, old identities, old emotional narratives, long after they've outgrown them. But depth without evolution becomes stagnation. You must allow yourself to shed skins, to contradict your past self, to change your mind. 2. Release beliefs that once protected you but now confine you. This is individuation. The process Jung believed was the highest calling of the human psyche. It is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming whole. The rebellion is claiming your wholeness. And when you do, everything shifts. Your thoughts become tools instead of traps. Your emotions become signals instead of storms. Your intuition becomes a compass instead of chaos. Your depth becomes clarity instead of weight. This is the moment you break free not from the world, but from the invisible prison of misunderstanding your own nature. But every rebellion leads to a revelation. Every transformation reveals a truth that was previously obscured, waiting quietly behind the noise of daily life. And for deep thinkers, there is one final realization, one ultimate truth that changes everything. A truth that does not merely explain your depth but redefines your existence. There comes a moment quiet, uninterrupted, almost sacred, when you sense that everything you've struggled with, everything you've questioned, everything you've carried has been leading you toward a realization you're not yet ready to see. It doesn't arrive like lightning. It arrives like dawn, slow, inevitable, impossible to resist once it begins to rise. This is the moment when the final truth of deep thinking reveals itself. Imagine this. You're walking alone at night, not out of sadness, but out of a strange clarity that only solitude grants you. Streetlights stretch across the pavement, shadows lean against buildings, and the air feels heavier than usual, as if the world is holding its breath. For the first time you feel not like an outsider watching life, but like a witness to something ancient moving inside you. You realize that your depth was never about thinking more. It was about perceiving differently. It was about feeling the currents beneath the surface of things, currents most people never learn to sense. And then, in this quiet moment, the ultimate truth whispers itself into your awareness. One, deep thinking is not a burden, it is a form of sight. You were never over. You were seeing what others could not. You were perceiving threads of meaning, emotional resonance, symbolic patterns, intuitive signals, all the invisible architecture that shapes human behavior, identity, and destiny. Your mind was built not for speed but for depth, not for simplicity but for truth. And truth, by its nature, is rarely comfortable. This is why your path felt heavier, not because you were weak, but because you were carrying awareness that others leave behind. And then a second realization unfolds too. You were not meant to fit into the world, you were meant to understand it. Society rewards conformity. Depth disrupts conformity. Most people cling to the persona because it offers safety, acceptance, and predictability. But deep thinkers were never meant to live at the level of the mask. Your mind was designed to look behind the curtain, into the subconscious, into the symbolic, into the archetypal forces moving beneath the facade. Jung believed that consciousness expands not through comfort, but through facing the unknown within and without. Your depth is not an error of nature. It is an evolutionary impulse, a psychological frontier. You are not malfunctioning, you are awakening, and from this awakening emerges the third, most liberating truth. 3. The meaning you search for is not out in the world, it is inside you, deep. Thinkers often wander through life searching for a truth that feels just out of reach, a missing piece, a guiding purpose, a message hidden between the lines. You look to philosophy, psychology, spirituality, relationships, and achievement, hoping something external will complete the internal puzzle. But the ultimate truth is this: what you've been searching for is the part of you you have not yet become. Meaning is not discovered. Meaning is created. Meaning is lived. Your depth isn't a treasure you're supposed to find. It's a territory you're meant to explore. You are both the map and the one who reads it, both the question and the answer. And this leads to the final, most profound realization. For your depth is your pathway to wholeness. Every struggle you've faced, every moment of alienation, existential tension, emotional intensity has been guiding you toward integration. Jung described individuation as the process of becoming complete, not perfect. It is the reconciliation of opposites within you: persona and shadow, intellect and instinct, vulnerability and strength. Deep thinkers are drawn to this process instinctively. It pulls you forward, the way gravity pulls planets into orbit. Silent, constant force shaping your identity. And here lies the final truth: your depth is not the problem. Your resistance to it is. Once you stop resisting, once you stop pathologizing your mind, once you stop trying to flatten your perception to match a world built on avoidance, everything changes. You begin to see your solitude was never emptiness. It was preparation. Your introspection was never anxiety. It was awareness. Your questions were never existential spirals. They were doorways. Your intensity was never too much. It was your psyche insisting on truth. Your sensitivity was never a weakness. It was the antennae of a perceptive soul. And suddenly, the whole arc of your life makes sense. You weren't struggling because you were broken. You were struggling because you were evolving. You were shedding illusions. You were seeing through appearances. You were becoming someone consciousness rarely produces. You were waking up. Now imagine this. You stand once more in your internal landscape, not as a wanderer, but as its architect. The shadows no longer chase you, they follow you. The questions no longer consume you, they guide you. The depth no longer isolates you, it elevates you. You walk forward, not as someone seeking answers, but as someone embodying the truth that all seekers eventually uncover. You are not here to escape your mind. You are here to explore it. not here to simplify your existence, but to expand it, not here to fit into the world, but to illuminate it. This is the final realization, the one that transforms your entire journey. The psychology of the deep thinker is not a story of suffering, it is a story of awakening. And awakening is the beginning of freedom.